Have you ever wondered what all those biblical stories, those scriptures, those mysterious books are all about? Today I'm going to be unlocking the secrets to those ancient texts and why what they're talking about is not what we were told. Stay tuned. Hi everybody, Tal here. Welcome to Choosing to Connect, the place to love your life by living from love. And I am a social psychologist, a spiritual teacher. In case you don't know me yet, then I've been studying the wisdom of Kabbalah for over 13 years. And thanks to it, I've discovered so much about the secret to life. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what is behind all of those religious texts and scriptures, and what is it that actually makes them holy, powerful, special? Let's open that up for a moment. But first I want to say that the reason I'm talking about this today is because it's Passover. If you're Jewish, then you know this. And this is a Jewish holiday where people get together and read the story of the Exodus together. And so in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about that story of the Exodus, which is a very powerful story. And most people know it because there were all those Hollywood films, where they showed the 10 plagues of Egypt and what happened to those people and how they escaped Egypt. It's like a big story, and I think we all know it. So I'm going to use it as an example to get a little bit more deep into what these stories are really about. So let's start from the beginning. When I was growing up, when I was in school, when I was at university, I too did not really get what are these scriptures really about? I mean, we had to study them in high school. It was mandatory. I had to remember things by heart. I had to know all the details of these biblical stories, but they didn't really mean anything to me. I just memorized them, and I was told that this is an important book. And I was told that this was a historical book. This was a book of, literary importance. Of course, the importance of the events in there had to do with our history, and so on and so forth. But that really didn't suffice. I mean, that wasn't enough for me because I didn't really understand why, with all of the literary and historical importance, was this book, the Bible, considered to be holy, really like a centerpiece of our culture. What was it about those stories that really made it so special? And I hope this is not hurting anybody's feeling, but this is just my perspective of life. I'm always curious. I always want to understand things. And I was never religious in the sense that I was told to believe something blindly and that was it. I was always taught to be a researcher of my reality. And interestingly enough, this research, this attitude of curiosity is what brought me to delve into these scriptures, into these texts and stories, and unlock their true power and unlock the mystery and the secrets behind them. So I recommend to be an open mind with curiosity and a researcher of reality. So another thing that seemed really strange to me about these stories is how violent some of them are, how much suicide and violence and even interfamily conflict, to the extent that you have a story about a father wanting to sacrifice their child, and all these things that are happening in these stories that to me didn't really feel right, and people need to tell this to their children, I thought. So how could that be? How could these cultural stories that really have been the basis of our cultures, of our mindsets, right, and our philosophies, how could they be so gory, so violent? So that was another mystery to me, another enigma that I carried with me for many years. And then I went to university and I happened to take a class called biblical psychology. It was part of my psychology studies. And in that class, I was finally given a chance to take a look at these stories from a more psychological perspective and to see them not at face value, but rather as stories that held hidden meanings, or I would say a parable. I would see them as a parable that had a message to tell me. And I would try and decipher what these stories were all about. Like, what did they have to give to me, to my daily life, to be relevant to my life here and now. And finally, I could connect to these stories, to the books, on a deeper level. But still, those questions of the violence and the gore, they still didn't relent, and I still didn't quite understand. It wasn't until I had found the teachings of Kabbalah, which is the internality of the Bible, of the Torah. It's really the spiritual secret method that exists within these religious contexts. And most religious people don't know about this. I think most people in general don't know enough about this. This is a universal method that is not for Jews alone. It was something that came about in ancient Babylon when Abraham started teaching people how to experience the oneness of nature, how to rise to higher levels of consciousness and rise above egoism, division, and separateness to experience reality in a more expanded way. And all of this was put into these texts and scriptures, and later religions kind of took that and made it into something else. But the original wisdom was taught by Abraham to anyone who listened, to any person from the different tribes of Babylon, where all of civilization was centered at that time. And those people who gathered around Abraham, those disciples later became the Jewish people. But in essence, they were part of every other tribe in the world. So even to this day, the Jews, if you see the Jewish people, they are, they're made of all colors, all backgrounds, all different kinds of people. They're not a regular people in that sense, because they are representatives of every other nation in the world. And that original wisdom belongs to everyone. So, long story short, I found this wisdom at last. And what it taught me about these scriptures, about these texts and stories, is that they are indeed parables, but they're written in a code language that you need to know, you need to understand in order to decipher. Now, this is very deep, it's very difficult, it's not something that we can easily do, because to really unlock the secret, we have to undergo an internal change, a change in consciousness, to really be able to experience and understand what these texts talk about. But I'm going to give you a small example so you get a little understanding, a little taste of what it means to go into these texts and really open them up. So first of all, the texts are not about geography and they're not about history. These texts are only speaking about one spiritual development, the process of evolution that we need to undergo. And they're always teaching you how to go from ego consciousness to unity consciousness, from division, separateness, and disconnect from the spiritual system to the experience of love, connection, giving, unity, and oneness with all of life. Now let's take the story of the Exodus as an example. The story of the Exodus is such an important story because it depicts the first time that a person is able to become free of their ego and attain that expansive state of unity consciousness. It's the first time that a person is able to make that leap, that escape. And it's a process, right? It's a process. There's 10 plagues involved. There's a lengthy time of enslavement to the ego, Egypt, Pharaoh, the Egyptians. All of this is all something within your own consciousness. It's that default state that we have when we're conscious of it, because before we're conscious of it, then we're not in Egypt. But we are in Egypt when we become conscious of how we are enslaved by our ego, by our egoism, meaning we're enslaved by that inner mechanism that makes us focus on the self alone, on our personal gain, feelings, emotions, needs. That's it. When we are enslaved to our ego, it completely cuts off the perception of reality in its wholeness. And all we can perceive is a very narrow and limited reality. which is our 3D material world and whatever we can perceive within it, because even in this world, we don't perceive so much of what's going on. There's so much unknown, right? We don't know the truth of so many things. So Egypt in Hebrew is Mitzrayim. It's a narrow place. It comes from the word narrow. It's a very narrow existence. And we have to be enslaved in there for quite some time before we can awaken and decide that this is not what we want. And so, there's those 7 good years where we're still happy in our enslavement to an egoistic mentality. And you can also see this in the bigger picture of our world, where we were happy with this world for a while. We were happy with the capitalistic kind of self-gain. I want to be the winner. I want to be on top kind of mentality. But at some point, we began to see how it's destroying the environment, destroying our societies, all this competition, all this stress, all this anxiety and depression. It's adding up, and our world seems like it's falling apart. So right now, it seems like we are all, as a humanity, transitioning into the awareness that this is not the right way for us to be. And after that, we will be able to escape from this narrow existence into our truly happy, harmonized state of freedom. The plagues, of course, have to come on the way to that freedom. And the pandemic that we're experiencing is one of those plagues. And what it does is that it helps us shift from our old way of life, our old level of consciousness, to a whole new level of consciousness. So that's not like in the bigger picture, but it's also something that happens within each and every one of us. And so what you should be looking at when you're looking at these texts is that process of internal evolution from ego consciousness, from narrow existence to your fully evolved state. By the way, within the text, those people of Israel, Moses, those are those internal forces within you that strive towards unity, that strives towards spirituality, towards freedom. They're the ones who want to be free. And again, we're not talking about geography or history or any of that. It's just terminology used to depict these internal forces within any person on earth. So each one of us has an internal Moses, an internal people of Israel, an internal Egypt, an internal Pharaoh, and of course a creator, a God, a higher power that is leading you and helping you. Another thing I wanted to say about the people of Israel, why are they called Israel? So in Hebrew, Israel is actually made up of 2 words, Yashar El Israel. This means straight to God, meaning straight to spirit. These are these inclinations within you to strive towards spirituality. So all this, if you take it apart and you really come to see these terms and these texts from their spiritual and internal meaning, then it completely transforms the text. It's not about violence. It's not about physical suffering. It's about a process of enlightenment that each of us needs to undergo. It's really telling you about processes of nature, how they're supposed to happen, how is evolution supposed to take place, how you can take those reins of evolution into your hands and start progressing in your conscious evolution willingly, consciously, and successfully. So, that was quite an episode. I really wanted to give you a glimpse into this world of spirituality that is the wisdom of Kabbalah. There's a lot to tell. And I wanted to tell you a little bit more about those mysterious texts and scriptures that we know since we were children. Of course, if you're religious, this is not going to sound familiar. It might even, trigger you in some ways. So please write down in the comments how you felt about what you just heard, and I'll try and answer and explain why what I'm saying is not negating anything at all. People can stay religious, people can keep doing what they're doing, but we do need to add an internal spiritual level or layer to everything else that we're doing in this world so that we can rise to our higher levels of consciousness and really breathe life into all of our beliefs, our faith, our desire to attain something higher than this life. It's through this method that we can actually achieve it and make it real and make it whole. So you don't just believe something that somebody told you, but you actually experience it here and now within your consciousness. So everybody, please let me know what you thought about this. I was kind of being vulnerable here and opening up things that I haven't opened up before. So I really want to know what you think about it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be happy to create more videos like this if this interests you. So let me know, and we'll be in touch. Bye for now.